This is a really difficult story to tell. There's so much backstory, but we feel like right now is the appropriate time to share. Seven years ago, Alyssa and I were living in a 4th floor apartment building in suburban Colorado. We didn't own much. We barely had a parking space, and we were both working full-time jobs. We knew something wasn't right. We could just kind of tell intuitively that we needed to change. So we had a conversation that lasted many days. And what we talked about was, what does our ideal life look like? If we could do anything, what would it be? And we wrote this stuff down. We kind of talked about maybe where we would live, what we would do, maybe have a family. Do we want food? Do we want to hunt? What do we want to spend our time doing? Which is really easy to do. But the truth is, it takes a tremendous amount of effort to realize your dreams. It took us 2 years to begin moving the direction that dream life plan took us. We've been very fortunate over the last 5 years to build a pretty substantial following on YouTube. And a lot of people have been with us most of the journey, but not too many people have been with us since the very beginning. So a lot of people have joined us at some stage of this journey. And it's really easy to see where we are now, but we want to talk about how we got here, because that's really the important story. A lot of folks who have been following us since the very beginning really only know us from the time that we landed on this dirt. But what people don't understand is that it took us a long time to get to this dirt. And it's taken us a long time to get this dirt turned into a beautiful property where we can produce food, we can have a comfortable life, and we have a lot of resources. It's too easy to look at where we're at now and totally ignore the amount of sacrifices it took to get here. When we first started on this journey, we sold everything we had, which didn't amount to much. We had to leave behind our employment, and we had to sacrifice everything we had to start very small. We lived in this cabin and the RV that's in that RV garage for 3.5 years. We did that for one simple reason. It was what it took to begin to live the dream life. Those that have been following us know that when we arrived on this property, it was super bare. It was almost comical how ill-equipped we were for the life that was ahead of us. In fact, this little cabin was totally a reaction to winter coming way too soon. This RV will freeze up if we don't have a way to heat it, and we had nowhere to keep things from freezing. So we built this cabin very quickly to give us an area that was heated and protected. We did a video discussing that. We'll link to that if you want to see the story behind this. It was built with reclaimed materials and very basic tools. Because we had very limited funds, we had to make some way to live comfortably, but on a very, very tight budget. So this tiny little RV we were able to find on Craigslist, and we paid cash for it. And it allowed us to live here on our property with no rent and very little overhead. If you're wondering, that was never, ever, ever part of our dream plan. But this is what we were willing to do to begin to have our dream plan. You see, when we started, that house didn't even exist. Neither did the house plan. So this is all work that we've been doing for the last 4+ years on this property. But this RV and this small cabin allowed us to start on this journey. When we first arrived on this property, we had done an analysis, the cost of connecting to the grid for electricity, and at the time it seemed cost prohibitive. In the long run, we came to the conclusion that it was actually very affordable, but we started this whole thing off grid. We had a small battery bank and we had a small set of solar panels, and that served us really well for the entire time that we lived in this cabin and this RV. When we first arrived on the property, we had no water source. In fact, we wouldn't have a water source until recently, within the last year. At first, getting any kind of a water source was cost prohibitive. We just didn't have the money to do it. And so we were able to find 6-gallon water jugs, and we carried our water that way for almost a year. That's right, we did dishes, we took showers, we did all of our necessary cleaning, all of that with water that we physically carried in a water jug. We did that because that's what it took to achieve the dream. No, that also was not part of our dream plan. This garden has been a massive blessing, and we have produced a large amount of food that we've been able to preserve as well as eat fresh. But when we first started, there was no garden. The first couple of years when we arrived on this property with our tiny little RV were spent literally just trying to get the bare essentials to survive here. We had no time to garden. But what we learned is that you don't need to have a garden in order to have access to copious amounts of food. So we learned to forage. It turns out there's a ton of food all over the place. So gardening is great, but if you actually take the time and look around, educate, and go out and spend some time in the woods, you'll actually find that there's a lot of food that Mother Nature provides. There's just one problem with having all this food available. How do you store it? We're off-grid. We have very little protected space that's temperature controlled. So we had to learn to preserve the food because we want to have it in the winter and off-season months. So we had to learn to preserve it in ways that we could keep it. We taught ourselves to do water bath canning and pressure canning. We also taught ourselves to do home brewing so that we could preserve some fruit in a drinkable form, not just jams and jellies. This tiny little RV gave us copious amounts of time, although we didn't have much money. But in the end, time is actually what it took to get all this stuff built. Early on our channel, a lot of people mocked us and asked us questions like, why the heck would you build a hot tub deck? You don't even have a house, you idiot. What people don't understand is that this was actually a practice project. Alyssa and I had no real building experience to amount to anything. A little bit. We knew the ins and outs of some of the power tools and things, but honestly, we'd never built anything together before. We did an entire video on this project and why we did this. There's other reasons, of course. We have a wood-fired hot tub, which we don't need grid power to enjoy. And after a long day, no one's going to argue with you on the enjoyment that you get from soaking in your hot tub. Anybody who, with no building experience and a fairly young relationship, decides to build a house, well, you get what you deserve, honestly. It's probably going to fall apart, all of it. The house, the relationship, everything. So this deck was a huge project for us. But you know what? It took a lot of time. The nice thing about that deck is we own it because it didn't cost us anything. We built it from materials that we made with our own hands on our own property. What we didn't see coming is the hot tub forcing us to improve our water system. Those 6-gallon jugs were working pretty well, but of course they weren't going to last. There's no way you could run this house on 6-gallon water jugs. And because of that, we decided to put in or install a permanent water system. This took us a really long time, but there's actually a trench that goes down our hillside and it goes to hydrants that are located at our garden, in our house, and at the hot tub deck. And that huge project enabled us to have some water freedom. Not only that, we own our water. We don't have to get it from someone else. When we first got the cisterns installed, we were actually using a community water source to fill them, but they were always designed to be a buffer or a shock absorber in the future water system, whatever that ended up being. It's always been really important to us to own everything on our property. We wanted to drill a well for a long time, but it didn't make sense. We were concerned about the cost and, of course, the risk of doing so. One crazy day, our well driller called and said we're on our way, and we were both excited and frightened, but we're very happy to report we have an amazing well. We did a video on this. Give it a watch. It's not just a huge win for us, but it was the first real break we've ever had on this entire project. So what does the RV have to do with the well? By living in the RV and keeping our expenses extremely low allowed us to save money constantly. And we got to the point where we were willing to take the risk to drill a well. And of course, if you watch the video, you'll find out that the well cost us substantially less. And it's performing way better than we ever expected. Truth is, at any time we could have connected to a community water system. We have one available, but we didn't want to. We wanted to have our own water. We wanted to own it, to possess it, so that it's ours and we don't have to ask permission to access it, and no one can come and turn it off for any reason at all. The other thing that the RV did was teach us to conserve. Well, that and carrying 6-gallon water jugs will force you to conserve because water is heavy. And because of that, we've always been more conscious of what we use and why. I can tell you that when you connect to the grid, you're going to use more because it's really hard to measure what you use. But we're very thankful for the time that we spent in the RV because now we're way more conscious about the things that we have. Through our channel, we've had a lot of people make comments like, boy, if I just was made of bottomless money or endless money, I could do that too. Or, must be nice to be a trust fund baby. I think these type of comments are meant to try to discount or diminish the work that Alyssa and I have done. But I think the thing that nobody can discount, no matter what, is the sacrifices that we've made. This house did not come from somebody giving it to us. And I don't care how much money you have, if you're wealthy but you're lazy, you're never going to be able to build this house. And we take a lot of pride in that. This house was not built with money, it was built with hard work and sacrifice. And quite frankly, that little RV and that ugly little garage is what made this house even remotely possible for us. We tell people all the time, let's say that your rent is $1,300 a month. And we lived in that RV for 3.5 years, which is 42 months. Take 42 months times $1,500, it's about $63,000. If you took $63,000, you could get pretty stinking far on this house if you just had the time and you would teach yourself to build. Truth is, people expect this. They think this is the standard of living. They think they deserve this. And we made a choice that we were willing to live in that thing. And everyone looks at this thing and they're like, what is that stupid thing? And we're like, this is debt freedom. That's what this is. I remember when Alyssa and I first started, we said, yeah, we'll probably do the RV thing for 6 months. We did have a different plan. This was never the initial plan. It changed as soon as we arrived on our property. Because we planned on being off-grid, the structure that we had originally designed was freestanding. And this property is really hot in the summer, even though we're really far north. We decided because of that to scrap that plan and just sit. Learn the property and spend our time doing all the other stuff we've talked about, learning to hunt and forage and brew and build stuff. In the end, we think that was a great decision because we built a far better structure because we waited. But the net effect is we spent 3.5 years in a tiny little RV. I suppose by some people's standards, this cabin and this RV thing are ugly. I suppose by some people's standards, that deck and that hot tub, they're pretty ugly. And I suppose by some people's standards, this house is ugly. You know what's beautiful about all this ugly stuff that belongs to Alyssa and I? We own it. We will take this ugly stuff any day over a gorgeous house that everybody's jealous of and the mortgage that goes with it. We knew that there would come a point in time where the economy would struggle, and because of that, people who are leveraged would struggle. We wanted to get as far as we could on our house before the economy ever had any problems. We wanted to at least be dried in and comfortable living in it, and we achieved that. But we only were able to do that through a tremendous amount of sacrifice. The fact is that most people are unwilling to do that. They expect to live in this house even though they have no money, and they're highly leveraged, and they have to go to work. When we first were looking at our property, we were considering living somewhere else, maybe in an apartment or a house or something like that, and we felt like it was justified and it made sense. But there was one problem with that strategy. We felt like if we weren't here on the property, it would be much more difficult to build a house. We wanted to be here. First of all, we wanted to learn about the property, not come here for a couple of hours and then go somewhere else. Being on the property helped us to understand where the sun comes up, where it goes down, what it's like in the winter, what it's like in the summer, and all of that was part of our house plan. These houses aren't just draw some windows, draw some doors, draw some garage doors, and then put a bunch of wood together and it's a house. I mean, that is how a lot of houses are built today, because all people care about is how it looks. They don't actually care about how it functions. But this house was designed to function on this property. That was always the plan. And you know what? I'll just say, having lived in this house, it's working perfectly. Everything is doing exactly what we imagined it would happen. But that's only possible because we lived in a little RV that allowed us to be here. On top of that, as we were working on this house, it was often 16-hour days. And we just needed a place to sleep, cook, and do the other business. And the RV did all of that. Do we need a 37-foot fifth wheel with a huge bed and a big sofa and a nice big screen TV and a big refrigerator and a big kitchen? You don't need all that garbage. You just don't need it. We were able to get by in a tiny little RV. Now, of course, that's with our family circumstances, and our point is that you can get by on very little, but it's also a really strong motivator to be done and to enjoy what you've been aiming for all along. I already mentioned the cost savings of the RV and how that has helped us to achieve this project. On top of that, it allowed us to save in a lot of other ways. We were able to dedicate time to learning. For example, the timber frame that's inside here, we were able to go to a school in Maine and learn to timber frame. Of course, we had a wonderful class of amazing people and people from Maine who came and helped us build our timber frame. But we were only able to do that because we had the time and the money. The RV and its low overhead gave us so much freedom that we could explore things that we literally would have had no opportunity to do if we would have had like a traditional job, a 9 to 5. Another benefit to having a really low budget is that we were able to make an income change. A big part of our success here has been our ability to move our income online. And when we first started, we knew we needed to have a location agnostic income because most people have to go somewhere for a job. They have to be somewhere. We were able to develop a business that allowed us to be here on our property and still make an income. A lot of people have sent us emails asking us for all the details. The long and short of it is, you need to do your own research. There are a lot of people who are making their incomes online right now. It is extremely well established as an industry, so if you just take some time and you take some effort, you'll figure that stuff out. But here's the full story. It takes years. You're not just going to become a blogger tomorrow and make a bunch of money. And we didn't either. That's why we had to live in a tiny little RV because our budget was really small. In fact, a lot of the money that we did earn, we had to reinvest right back into the business. So having a small, paid-for, very budget-friendly lifestyle allowed us to make that transition. No, it was not sexy. It was not smooth. It did work eventually. It took a long time, but we finally got there. And if we had a bunch of overhead, a beautiful house, and nice cars, all that would have happened is we would have run up a bunch of debt, and we probably would have lost everything, to be honest with you. So having an income that we could work in our spare time or after hours allowed us a lot of time freedom, and that time freedom is what it took to build this house. On top of all the other sacrifices financially, living here, living modest, and then having a bunch of time, that's what has enabled us to build a beautiful home and to own it completely. The house is really the solution to a lot of the challenges that we have faced so far in transitioning to this self-sufficient lifestyle. We have more room to work. We have a temperature-controlled place to cook and to preserve food and to keep that preserved food. We also have a place indoors out of the elements where we can work, and we've been able to use this as a tool to continue down this path towards the dream life. Something we've learned by living in this tiny little RV is that most people are unwilling to make any sacrifices, and that unwillingness to make sacrifices is what keeps people from ultimately enjoying their dream life and enjoying stability and being debt-free. To say that we've received a little bit of criticism is a massive understatement. But I think the reason that a lot of this stuff doesn't really affect us is because it doesn't affect us. We're living the life that we set out to live. We built this house. We built this property. We built that hot tub deck. We built that cabin. We built that garden. We split all that firewood. This is all work that we've done, and we own it all, and nobody can take it away from us. And so ultimately, we're living our dream life. And I feel like a lot of people are maybe not living their dream life, and that's why they feel that resentment or bitterness or jealousy or whatever it is. So we've been trying to inspire other people to take that leap for themselves so that they can experience the satisfaction, the contentment, the stability that we are. At a time right now where a lot of people are freaking out and they're trying to figure out how to get their basic needs met, we're not. It's kind of weird. We're just not freaking out because we have all of our basic needs met, and we also have the ability to create even more. Making all the sacrifices that we made before and making all of these good decisions has brought us to this point in our life where it feels like a lot of uncertainty is going on around us, and it feels like a lot of people are quite frankly panicking. And we're not. It's a very odd sensation to see people kind of losing their mind and just acting irrational, and to feel like, well, I don't need to do that. And a lot of that has stemmed from our willingness to make major sacrifices early on, but also to work really hard to teach ourselves a lot of skills, and also to have neighbors and community that we can rely on. I want to be really careful to not make this video sound like it's just Alyssa and I, and that's it. We're like an island and we don't need other people. The truth is we also live in an amazing community of people who are very generous, and there's a tremendous amount of resources, and so we're not worried at all when it feels like the world is going through chaos. And we want to communicate that this all started with making that sacrifice in this tiny little RV. We've been hearing about the hysteria and ridiculousness that's going on in the world around us, and you know what? I'm going to be honest. I didn't believe it. So I went down to our local grocery store to see it for myself. I had not less than a half a dozen people tell me that the shelves are bare. Oh, there's no food in the store. Everything is scarce. I went to that store and I could only find about 4 or 5 things that were actually empty on the store shelves. Otherwise, the store was as full as these shelves right in front of me. Rational people will agree that panic makes people do really ridiculous things, like go into a grocery store that maybe kind of looks like it needs to be restocked a little bit, like maybe the day before they get their orders, and their reaction is the shelves are totally bare. I think what's really hard for us to communicate is we're not panicked. And I'm trying to think about why. When everybody else was buying new cars and getting a new house and going on vacation and spending a bunch of money and enjoying the luxury life, we were here, learning how to cook, learning how to forage, learning how to garden, learning how to build things, learning how to be debt-free, learning how to do a water system. That's the things that we were working on, and we feel like right now is when we get paid back for that. It's a huge reward. So I'm able to go to the grocery store and say, look, oh, there's cheese on the shelf. Well, we need cheese. We don't know how to make cheese yet. We're still working on that. All right, we'll get some cheese. But somebody who doesn't have those resources, who maybe wasn't spending their time or doesn't know how to spend their time creating self-sufficiency, yeah, I'd probably be freaking out too. If I relied on somebody else for everything, including my job, and if I lose my job, I lose everything, well, I guess that kind of justifies panic a little bit. Unfortunately, if you're one of those folks who is in a situation where you rely on somebody else for everything, your food and your housing, it's a little late to be making drastic changes to stabilize your situation. But we'll always tell people it's never too late to start. There's always a sacrifice you could probably be making that will help you work towards a more self-sufficient and a more stable life. That dream life that we envisioned when we were in Colorado, we're not there yet. We're still working on it. It's not something that you go get a loan from the bank and you say, hey, could somebody build my dream life for me? I'd like a 3-bed, 2-bath dream life with a 2-car garage, a nice back patio, a barbecue, a swimming pool, a cutesy little front yard with a lawnmower. That's not how this works. It's a lifestyle. It's not something that you achieve and then you go back to whatever, being a consumer or something. This is going to take us our entire life. We're very happy to have achieved this milestone, which is having a set of cabinets and a nice sink. We've got a place to put our little espresso maker. We've got some creature comforts for life. And this is a really big step forward for us. But this house and this whole property and this whole lifestyle, we have so far to go. The really weird thing is we're really excited about this, even though it means that we still are making sacrifices. This is it. This is our claim to fame. This is what we've got so far. We've got a clean, dry, warm, comfortable house and this. And that's enough for now because we're stable. So if we have to live with this for the next 15 years because the economy goes to crap and everyone's struggling financially, then we're just going to focus on gardening and preserving food. And this will last us just fine. I will say that having lived in a 19-foot RV for 3.5 years, you learn to appreciate everything. Like a full-size refrigerator is incredible. I'm pretty sure there's more room in this refrigerator than there was in our entire bed in the RV. And having an oven. We finally have an oven. We can actually cook. Like, it's so ridiculous. And we've got our washer and dryer. And this whole journey has totally been worth it. And living in that tiny little space makes us so thankful for what little we have. And as we build more and earn more and learn more, we just get better and better and better at this lifestyle. To say that our family is blessed is a huge understatement. I want to be careful using the word blessed because I don't want to diminish the value of the hard work that Alyssa and I have done and all the people who have supported us and who have helped us. We are super thankful for all those people, all the opportunity, all the help and everything that it's taken to help us get here. We hope that by watching this video and watching a lot of the other videos on our channel that you find some inspiration. There's no greater pleasure that Alyssa and I get than when we run into somebody or get an email, or maybe we even see another YouTube channel pop up where we see people doing this, trying. We already know how ugly and unsexy it can be, but we know the satisfaction that comes from making those sacrifices. So if you're somebody who's doing that, huge high five, pat on the back, keep going, make whatever sacrifices are necessary. It's gonna be worth it in the end, trust us. The beautiful thing is, if life gets really, really, really bad, you can always go back to whatever you were doing before. If you're someone who has been longing for this lifestyle but hasn't made the jump yet, ask yourself why. Are you just making excuses? I mean, what's really keeping you from taking that leap? There's never gonna be a right time, and it's never gonna be sexy. Everyone's journey is unique. You can only ask so many questions before you're just gonna have to do it. And people can help you, but you're gonna have to do it. And we can assure you that what's on the other side is totally worth whatever sacrifices you need to make. If you just trust your gut and get started, you'll figure it out. If this current crisis situation is affecting you and you're thinking to yourself, man, I can't keep doing this thing that I've been doing, you're probably going through a similar thing that Alyssa and I went to way back when we were in Colorado on the 4th floor of our apartment. We encourage you to jump back to the beginning of our channel. In your spare time, watch the videos. You're gonna see what Alyssa and I tried and what worked, what didn't work. You're gonna laugh a little, you're gonna cry a little, you're gonna get scared a whole bunch, you're gonna get some shockers, but you're gonna see the journey, what it took to get here. If you watch our latest videos, all you're seeing is where we ended up, and you're not seeing at all what it took to make the transition. I don't know that we would ever want it this way, but sometimes it takes a crisis situation to knock some sense into us. So if that's what it takes to get more people interested in being self-sufficient and enjoying the benefits of this lifestyle, well, maybe it's worth it.